There is something you keep trying not to notice. Not because it's unclear, but because it's too clear. It reaches you in silence. It finds you when everything slows down. It appears right when you think you finally moved on, and for a moment, you feel it. A pause, a shift, a quiet weight inside your chest that doesn't feel like your usual thoughts, but then you do what you always do. You look away. You tell yourself it's nothing. You call it overthinking. You convince yourself it doesn't matter. And yet, it comes back. Again. In a different moment. Again. In a different form. Again. With the same feeling you can't fully explain. Almost like it's not asking for your attention anymore. It's waiting for your honesty. Because if it was just your mind, it would have faded by now. If it was just a random thought, it wouldn't follow you like this. If it meant nothing, it wouldn't keep reaching you at the exact moments your heart is open enough to feel it. But it does, and deep down, you already know why. You've just been avoiding the answer. Because the moment you accept that this isn't random, that this isn't just you, that this is something being shown to you, everything changes, and maybe that's why you kept ignoring it. Because once you see it clearly, you won't be able to go back. And now, it's here again. Not louder, not stronger, but clearer than ever. And this time, you won't be able to pretend you didn't feel it. 1, it keeps returning to you, but you keep pushing it away. At the beginning, it didn't feel important at all. It came quietly, almost like a passing thought, being something so small that you didn't feel the need to stop and pay attention. You told yourself it was nothing serious, just a random feeling, just another moment in your day that would fade like all the others. And because it felt so light, so easy to ignore, you let it go without thinking twice. But then it came back. Not in the same exact way, but close enough for you to recognize it. Maybe it came as a thought at night when everything was silent. Maybe it appeared in the middle of your day when you were busy. Maybe it showed up as a feeling you couldn't explain, a quiet heaviness or a sudden pull in your chest. And again, you ignored it. You told yourself the same thing. It's nothing. And you moved on. But it didn't stop there. It kept returning. Again. And again. And again. Not randomly, not without reason, but with a strange consistency that you didn't want to notice. It started appearing at moments when your mind was quiet, when your heart was open, when distractions were gone, almost like it was waiting for the right time, the moment when you couldn't easily escape it. And every single time it returned, you responded in the same way. You shut it down before it could grow. You filled your mind with something else. You reached for your phone. You changed your focus. You avoided sitting with it. You didn't allow yourself to look at it deeply because something inside you felt that if you did, it might mean more than you're ready to accept, so you kept pushing it away. But the more you pushed it away, the more it refused to disappear. Instead of fading, it became clearer. Instead of weakening, it became stronger. It started lasting longer in your mind. It started feeling heavier in your heart. It started becoming something you couldn't easily brush aside anymore. And that's the part you didn't understand. Because things that are truly meaningless don't fight to stay. Random thoughts don't return with this kind of persistence. Empty feelings don't follow you into your quiet moments again and again. If something keeps finding its way back to you, despite you ignoring it, despite you avoiding it, then there is something behind it that you haven't understood yet. Some things don't return by accident. They return with purpose. Not to disturb you, but to reach you. Not to confuse you, but to make you notice something you've been missing. And the more you ignore them, the more they begin to grow inside you, not because they are trying to overwhelm you, but because they are trying to be heard. That's why it feels louder now, not louder in sound, but louder in presence. It stays longer. It feels deeper. It touches something inside you that you can't easily explain. And even if you try to move away from it, it somehow finds you again, because it was never something meant to disappear quickly. It was something meant for you to stop, to notice, and finally ask yourself a question. You've been avoiding this whole time. Why does this keep coming back to me? And what am I refusing to see? 2. You called it overthinking, but it was never just your mind. At some point, you gave it a name. You didn't try to understand it. You just labeled it. You said, "I'm overthinking again." You said, "My mind is just playing tricks." You said, "I need to calm down. This isn't real." And in that moment, you felt relief, because calling it overthinking made it easier to ignore. It gave you a quick escape. It allowed you to step away without going deeper, without asking harder questions, without facing the possibility that this feeling might actually mean something. But the problem is, you started treating everything the same way. Every thought dismissed, every feeling reduced, every signal silenced. You built a habit of not listening, and slowly, without realizing it, you stopped being able to tell the difference between what is noise and what is real. Because yes, sometimes the mind does overthink. Sometimes it creates unnecessary fears, unnecessary doubts, unnecessary stories. But not everything that repeats inside you is meaningless. Not everything that returns is just imagination. Some thoughts don't come from confusion. They come with clarity, but you never stay long enough to see it. Some feelings don't come to distract you. They come to guide you, but you shut them down too quickly. And this is where the misunderstanding begins. Because when something real reaches your heart, it doesn't always come with a clear explanation. It doesn't always come with logic that your mind can immediately understand. It comes quietly. It comes in a way that feels subtle, almost easy to ignore. Unless you slow down and pay attention. But you didn't slow down. You rushed to label it. You rushed to escape it. And every time you did that, you pushed away something that might have been important for you to see. That's why it kept coming back. Not because your mind was out of control, but because you never gave it space to be understood. You never sat with it long enough to ask, why does this feel different? Instead, you treated it like everything else. And the more you did that, the more disconnected you became from your own awareness. You started trusting your quick reactions more than your deeper feelings. You started choosing comfort over truth, because truth requires you to pause, to reflect, to be honest with yourself. And that's not always easy. It's easier to say, this is just overthinking, than to say, maybe there's something here I need to understand. But deep down, you felt the difference. You knew this wasn't the same as your usual thoughts. There was something about it that stayed longer, something about it that felt heavier, something about it that kept returning, no matter how many times you tried to silence it. And still, you kept calling it the same thing, overthinking. Because if you admitted it wasn't, then you would have to face it. And facing it might change something. It might shift your perspective. It might lead you somewhere you weren't planning to go. It might reveal something you've been avoiding. So you stayed where it felt safe. But what felt safe was also what kept you stuck. Because not everything inside your mind is meant to be ignored. Some things are meant to be understood. Some things are meant to be listened to. And some things are placed inside you for a reason you haven't discovered yet. And the moment you stop calling everything overthinking is the moment you finally begin to see clearly. 3. Allah is reaching you in ways you don't recognize. You were waiting for something obvious, something clear, something direct, something you couldn't question, a sign that leaves no doubt, a moment that explains everything, a voice that tells you exactly what to do. But that's not how it always comes, because Allah doesn't only guide through what is loud and visible. He often guides in ways that are quiet, gentle, and easy to overlook if your heart is not paying attention. And this is where you misunderstood it. You were looking for something big, while something small kept reaching you. You were waiting for certainty, while something subtle kept repeating. You thought guidance would arrive in a way that forces you to notice. But real guidance often comes in a way that invites you to notice. It doesn't push you. It calls you. It doesn't overwhelm you. It returns to you again and again until you finally stop and reflect. Allah says in the Quran that He shows signs to those who reflect, not to those who rush, not to those who ignore, but to those who pause and think and allow their hearts to see what is right in front of them. And maybe this is one of those signs. Not something dramatic, not something the whole world can see, but something placed specifically for you. A feeling that appears at the right moment, a thought that returns when you need it most, a reminder that finds you when everything else becomes silent. These are not accidents. These are not random interruptions in your day. These are moments where something beyond you is trying to reach you without forcing you. Because Allah doesn't take away your choice. He doesn't force you to understand. He opens doors and then waits to see if you will walk through them. And the way He opens those doors is not always what you expect. Sometimes it's through discomfort. Sometimes it's through repetition. Sometimes it's through something you can't fully explain, but you can feel it, and you felt it more than once. That quiet pull, that moment of pause, that sense that something about this is different, like your heart recognized something before your mind could understand it. But you moved past it too quickly. You didn't stay with it. You didn't allow yourself to sit with the feeling and ask, why is this coming back to me? Because if you had asked that question honestly, you might have realized that this wasn't just coming from within you. It was being placed in front of you, again and again and again, not to confuse you, but to guide you, not to disturb your peace, but to lead you to a deeper one. Because sometimes what you think is disturbing you is actually calling you to look closer, calling you to reflect deeper, calling you to return to something you've been ignoring. And the truth is, Allah's way of reaching you is often so gentle that you can easily mistake it for your own thoughts. That's why you didn't recognize it. That's why you dismissed it. But now, if you look again, if you pay attention without rushing to ignore, you'll start to see a pattern. You'll notice that it doesn't come randomly. You'll notice that it appears at meaningful moments. You'll notice that it carries a weight, a depth, a sense of purpose. And slowly, you'll begin to understand. This was never just your mind speaking. This was something being shown to you, something being repeated for you, something being sent to you in a way that respects your choice, but still reaches your heart. Because guidance doesn't always arrive as a command. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper. And if you keep ignoring the whisper, you risk missing something that was meant to change everything. 4. You felt the difference, but you still chose to ignore it. There were moments when it didn't feel like your usual thoughts. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't scattered. It didn't feel like noise. It felt different, calmer, but heavier, quieter, but deeper, stronger, without being loud. And for a brief second, you paused. Not because you forced yourself to pause, but because something inside you stopped on its own. Like your heart recognized something before your mind could explain it. You felt it, clearly enough to notice, but not long enough to accept. Because right after that moment, you moved away. You told yourself not to think about it too much. You told yourself it would pass. You told yourself it's better not to go deeper. And just like that, you stepped out of it. Not because it wasn't real, but because it felt too real. There's a difference between a random thought and something that carries weight. Random thoughts feel light. They come and go quickly. They don't stay with you. They don't follow you into silence. But this stayed. It didn't disappear the moment you got distracted. It didn't lose its presence the moment you looked away. It waited, and then it returned. Not to disturb you, but because you never truly faced it. The truth is, you did recognize it. Maybe not fully, maybe not clearly, but enough to feel that this wasn't the same as everything else that passes through your mind. There was something about it that made you slightly uncomfortable, not because it was wrong, but because it was asking for your attention. And attention requires honesty. It requires you to slow down, to sit with what you feel, to stop running from what's inside you. And that's the part you avoided, because facing something real can change you. It can shift the way you see things. It can move you in a direction you didn't plan for. And sometimes, even if something is right, we resist it simply because it's unfamiliar. So instead of staying with that feeling, you escaped it. You filled your time with distractions. You gave your mind something else to focus on. You buried that moment under noise, just so you wouldn't have to deal with it. But it didn't disappear. Because real things don't disappear that easily. They don't fade just because you ignore them. They remain, quietly, waiting until you're ready to look again. And every time it came back, you were given another chance, another moment to pause, another opportunity to sit with it and understand what it's trying to show you. But you kept choosing the same response. Ignore it. Move on. Don't go deeper. And now, it keeps returning. Not because it wants to overwhelm you, but because it knows you haven't understood it yet. Because something inside you is still unfinished, still unanswered, still waiting for you to stop and finally face it. You felt the difference. You knew, even if just for a second, that this wasn't ordinary. But instead of following that feeling, you turned away. And sometimes, the biggest things we miss in life are not the ones we never felt. They are the ones we felt clearly, but chose not to follow. 5. It won't leave you because it was never meant to you. Thought it would fade with time. You told yourself, just give it a few days, it will pass. You believed distance would weaken it. You assumed silence would make it disappear, but it didn't. Days passed, then weeks, and still it found its way back. Not loudly, not forcefully, but consistently. Like something that refuses to be forgotten. And that's when it started to confuse you. Because everything else in your life moves on. Thoughts change, feelings shift, moments come and go. What felt strong yesterday becomes weak today. What felt important slowly loses its place in your mind. But this didn't follow that pattern. It stayed. Not in the same intensity, but in the same presence. Even when you were fine, it was still there. Even when you were distracted, it was still somewhere in the background. Even when you thought you had moved on, it quietly returned, and you kept asking yourself, why is this not leaving me? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question is, why do I expect it to leave when it was never meant to? Because not everything that stays is a problem. Not everything that remains is something you need to remove. Some things stay because they carry meaning. Some things stay because they are connected to something deeper than what you can see right now. And when something carries meaning, it doesn't disappear easily. It doesn't respond to time the way ordinary thoughts do. It doesn't fade just because you ignore it. It doesn't weaken just because you try to replace it with something else. It remains, patiently, quietly, almost like it's waiting for you to stop trying to escape it and finally turn towards it. You tried to get rid of it. You tried to forget it. You tried to distract yourself from it. You tried to convince yourself it doesn't matter. But the more you tried to remove it, the more you realized it wasn't something you could control that way. Because some things are not placed in your life to be erased. They are placed in your life to be understood. And until they are understood, they don't leave. They stay with you, not to burden you, but to guide you somewhere you haven't reached yet. And that's why it feels different. It doesn't behave like a random memory. It doesn't act like a passing feeling. It doesn't disappear like everything else. It stays close. Close enough for you to feel it. Close enough for you to notice it. Close enough for you to keep asking yourself what it means. And maybe that's exactly the point. Maybe it's not here to be removed. Maybe it's here to make you look deeper, to make you question something you've been avoiding, to make you face something you've been delaying, to make you see something you haven't allowed yourself to see. Because if it was meant to leave, it would have already left. The fact that it's still here, after everything you've done to ignore it, after every attempt to push it away, means there is something about it that still matters. Something unfinished. Something waiting. And the longer you try to escape it, the longer it will stay. Not to trap you, but to bring you to a point where you stop running and finally ask the question you've been avoiding this whole time. What is this trying to show me? 6. This might be a message, and you keep missing it. Every time you've been trying to get away from it, every time it appears, you distract yourself. Every time it returns, you push it aside. Every time it gets close, you create distance. You've been treating it like something unwanted, something that interrupts your peace, something that complicates your thoughts, something that you just need to move past. But what if you've been wrong about it this whole time? What if this isn't something to escape, but something to understand? Because think about it carefully. Why does it come back at specific moments? Why does it appear when your mind is quiet, when your heart is not distracted, when everything slows down just enough for you to feel it clearly? That's not random. That's not accidental. That's precise. Almost like it's reaching you at the exact moments when you are most able to receive it. But you keep turning away before it can fully reach you. And every time you turn away, you miss it again. You miss what it was trying to show you. You miss what it was trying to make you realize. You miss the meaning behind it because you never stay long enough to uncover it. Instead, you react quickly, you label it, you dismiss it, you move on. And by doing that, you break the connection before it can form. But what if you didn't do that this time? What if, instead of pushing it away, you allowed it to stay? What if you sat with it, without trying to control it, without trying to silence it, without trying to run from it? Because sometimes, the reason something keeps returning is not because it's trying to disturb you, but because it hasn't been received yet. It hasn't been understood yet. It hasn't been allowed to complete what it came to do. And the truth is, messages don't always come in clear words. They don't always arrive as direct answers. Sometimes they come as repetition, as patterns, as feelings that don't leave, as thoughts that return until you finally stop and ask, why does this keep coming back to me? And that question is where everything begins to change. Because the moment you stop reacting and start reflecting, you begin to see differently. You begin to notice details you never saw before. You begin to feel depth you kept ignoring. You begin to understand that this wasn't random noise. This was something trying to reach you. But you kept missing it. Not because it wasn't clear, but because you never gave it your full attention. And maybe that's why it hasn't stopped. Because it's still waiting for you to listen. Still waiting for you to pause. Still waiting for you to take it seriously. Just once. Without escaping. Because what if this really is a message? Not something imagined. Not something meaningless. But something placed in your path. Meant to guide you. Meant to wake you up. Meant to bring you closer to something you've been ignoring. And every time you miss it, you delay that moment of clarity. You delay that understanding. You delay that shift that could have already happened if you had just stayed with it. Just a little longer. So maybe the question is no longer, why does this keep happening to me? Maybe the real question is, how many times have I already missed it? And how many more times will it return before you finally listen? 7. The moment you stop running, the truth begins to unfold. You've been moving away from it for so long that running started to feel normal. Every time it came close, you created distance. Every time it became clear, you added noise. Every time it asked for your attention, you gave your attention to everything else, and slowly, this became your habit. Not facing, not pausing, not listening, just moving. Constantly moving, so you never have to sit with what's really there. But here's what you didn't realize. As long as you keep running, nothing changes. The same thoughts return. The same feelings repeat. The same confusion stays. Because running doesn't remove anything. It only delays it. It keeps you in the same place, just with more distance from the truth. And that's why it feels like you're stuck. Not because there's no answer, but because you've never stayed long enough to receive it. Because the truth doesn't chase you. It doesn't force itself into your mind. It doesn't shout over your distractions. It waits. It waits for the moment you slow down, the moment you stop escaping, the moment you finally allow yourself to be still. And that moment changes everything. Not instantly, not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that begins quietly and then slowly becomes clear. Because the moment you stop running, you start seeing. You start noticing things you missed before. You start feeling things more honestly. You start understanding pieces that never made sense. It's like something that was always there finally becomes visible. Not because it just appeared, but because you finally stopped looking away. And at first, it might feel uncomfortable, because truth often does. It asks you to be honest with yourself. It asks you to face what you avoided. It asks you to let go of the version of reality you created, just to stay comfortable. And that's not easy, but it's real. And there's a kind of peace that only comes with what is real. Not the temporary peace of distraction, not the false peace of avoidance, but the deep, steady peace of understanding. The kind that settles inside you, because something finally makes sense. And it doesn't come all at once. It unfolds, slowly, piece by piece, moment by moment, as you stay present, as you stop running, as you allow yourself to sit with what you feel instead of escaping it. You begin to see the meaning behind what kept returning. You begin to understand why it never left. You begin to realize that it was never there to confuse you. It was there to guide you. But guidance only works when you are willing to receive it. And receiving requires stillness. It requires attention. It requires you to stop just long enough for the truth to reach you. And maybe this is the moment. The moment where you don't run this time. The moment where you don't distract yourself. The moment where you finally sit with it, honestly, completely, without trying to escape. Because once you do that, you won't be asking the same questions anymore. You won't feel the same confusion anymore. Because the truth you've been avoiding will begin to unfold right in front of you. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it again. 8. This was never random. It was always Allah, trying to reach you. For a long time, you tried to convince yourself that it meant nothing. You called it coincidence. You called it imagination. You called it a passing phase that would eventually fade if you just gave it enough time. You reduced it to something small, or you wouldn't have to face the possibility that it might actually be something real, something important, something placed in your life with purpose. But the truth never fully left you, because deep down you felt it. You felt that this wasn't like your other thoughts. You felt that this wasn't something temporary that would come and go without leaving a mark. There was something about it that stayed, something about it that felt personal, something about it that kept returning in a way that didn't make sense if it was truly random. And that's where everything begins to shift, because random things don't stay with this kind of consistency. Random things don't return at the exact moments when your heart is quiet and open. Random things don't follow you through time, through distractions, through your attempts to forget. If something keeps reaching you, despite all the ways you've tried to ignore it, then it carries something deeper than coincidence. It carries intention. And when you begin to see it from that perspective, you realize something you didn't want to admit before. You realize that this was never just about your thoughts, never just about your emotions, never just about something happening inside your mind. This was something being placed in your awareness again and again, not to confuse you, not to disturb you, but to guide you towards something you haven't fully understood yet. Allah does not guide in only one way. Guidance is not always loud, not always direct, not always something that forces you to stop and pay attention. Sometimes it is subtle. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it comes in forms that look ordinary on the surface, but carry something extraordinary beneath. It comes in repetition, in patterns, in feelings that refuse to disappear, in moments that seem small, but leave a lasting effect inside you. And that is what you were experiencing. But you kept overlooking it. You kept treating it like everything else. You kept pushing it into the same category as random thoughts, even though it never behaved like one. And every time you did that, you moved a little further away from understanding what was actually happening in front of you. Because the truth is, this was never random. It was always reaching you, always returning to you, always waiting for you to recognize it for what it is. Not something to escape, not something to silence, but something to listen to, something to reflect on, something to take seriously, even if you don't fully understand it yet. And maybe now you're starting to see it differently. Maybe now you're beginning to notice the pattern that was always there. The way it comes back at the right time, the way it carries a certain weight, the way it doesn't disappear no matter how many times you try to move on from it. That realization changes everything, because once you understand that this was never random, you stop treating it like something meaningless. You stop ignoring it so quickly. You stop running from it without even trying to understand it. You begin to approach it with attention, with curiosity, with a willingness to finally see what it's trying to show you. And that is where guidance begins to open. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelms you, but slowly, in a way that becomes clearer, the more you allow yourself to stay present with it. Because guidance is not forced upon you. It is revealed to you, step by step, as you become ready to receive it. And maybe this is your moment. The moment where you stop calling it coincidence. The moment where you stop pushing it away. The moment where you finally accept that what you've been feeling all this time was not meaningless. It was a sign, a quiet one, a repeated one, a patient one. A sign that kept reaching you, even when you kept turning away. And now that you see it, even if only a little, you realize something that changes the way you look at everything that happened before. You realize that you were never being left alone in your confusion. You were never being abandoned in your uncertainty. You were being reached, again and again, in ways you didn't recognize at the time. And now that you do, you are no longer in the same place you were before. Because once you recognize that something is coming from Allah, you can no longer treat it like it's nothing. You can no longer ignore it the same way. You can no longer run from it without feeling that you are turning away from something important. And maybe that feeling is exactly what you needed, because it brings you back. Back to awareness, back to reflection, back to a place where you stop moving blindly and start paying attention to what is being shown to you. Because this was never random. It was always meant for you. And the fact that it reached you this many times means it still matters. It still holds meaning. It is still waiting for you to fully understand it. And this time, maybe you won't ignore it. Maybe this time, you will finally listen. There is something that kept reaching you, even when you weren't listening. It didn't force you. It didn't chase you. It didn't break you to get your attention. It came quietly, again and again and again, through moments you almost ignored, through feelings you didn't fully understand, through thoughts you kept trying to silence. And still, it didn't stop, because it wasn't trying to disturb you. It was trying to reach you, but you kept turning away. You kept choosing distraction over reflection. You kept choosing comfort over truth. You kept choosing to move on instead of looking deeper. And now, you see it. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough to feel that something about this was never random. Enough to realize that you were not just thinking, you were being shown something. And the truth is, not everyone gets that chance. Not everyone is reminded like this. Not everyone is reached like this. Not everyone is given signs that stay and wait and return. But you were, again and again, and maybe that's what should shake you the most. Not the feeling itself, but the fact that it kept coming back to you, that despite all the times you ignored it, it still returned. That despite all the moments you walked away, it still waited. And now, the question is no longer, why is this happening to me? The real question is, what am I going to do now that I see it? Because you won't be able to ignore it the same way anymore. You won't be able to pretend it's nothing anymore. You won't be able to go back to that version of yourself that kept brushing it off without thinking. Something has shifted. Something inside you has already started to change. And once that change begins, you can't undo it. You can only respond to it. So don't miss it again. Don't silence it again. Don't run from it again. Because some signs don't stay forever. Some doors don't remain open forever. And if you keep turning away, one day it will stop reaching you. Not because it was never there, but because you never answered. And that moment, that silence, that absence, will feel heavier than anything you've experienced before. So this time, pause. This time, listen. This time, don't let it pass like it did before. Because maybe this wasn't just a feeling. Maybe this wasn't just a thought. Maybe this was something sent to you one last time, hoping you would finally understand.